life. And we've talked about the first leading cause of life, which is connection. And we talked about how where connection is, we can see life bubbling up. We can see life becoming more real, stronger. Today we're going to talk about coherence. Now, coherence isn't a word that we use a lot. Well, okay, let me say it this way. It's not a word I use a lot. Maybe you all say coherence all the time, but it's not a word that I use a lot. So I want to talk a little bit about what we mean by coherence, what the definition of coherence is, at least for our purposes in the sermon series for us. We're going to talk about coherence as shared meaning and purpose. And even when we say that, sometimes it's hard to imagine what we're talking about. And although we don't talk about coherence a lot, or I don't talk about coherence a lot, a word that I do use more often is incoherence. Now, many of us, when we hear incoherence, will have a sense of what that means. It's unintelligible. We can't make sense out of it. It's chaotic, perhaps. It has no purpose. It really has no meaning. It's like gibberish. If something is incoherent, somebody is babbling along incoherently, like some Sunday mornings about. We can grasp that because we've seen that before, maybe even today. And so we can understand that. But coherence, of course, would be just the opposite. Coherence means that there is purpose, there is meaning, it makes sense. We can attach ourselves to it. In a sense, what we're talking about is shared meaning. That we incorporate that as a dynamic of a group that we're involved with. So we're going to talk about coherence and how it can be one of the leading causes of life. Now, also remember that a couple of weeks ago, when we kind of did a survey of where we were going with this, we said that when you find one leading cause of life, you will often find, not always, but you will often find the others. So there's a very close connection with connection and coherence, with being connected, with having a network that you're involved in, and coherence. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So what is the importance of coherence? Why is that so important to us? And as I began to think about that and unravel that over the week, I realized that one of the great importances of coherence is the ability to communicate. The ability to communicate. And in order to communicate, we have to share the same labels and meanings for words. We have to, when I say a word, it needs to be accurate communication. It needs to mean the same thing to you that it means to me. If I'm saying A, and you're hearing B, then we have miscommunication. It's only when you hear the same thing that I intend for you to hear, and you understand it as I intended it when I say it, does it make any sense? I'll give you a real-world example. When I was in the Coast Guard doing vessel inspections on the Delaware River, I never had any real problems inspecting the ships that had German registrations and a crew from Germany. I could usually understand what they were saying, and they could understand what I was saying. Never had any real trouble with the Japanese flagships or the Korean flagships or those. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones I've been on. The only one I really had a hard time with it could hardly ever understand were the British. It made no sense to me whatsoever. It is true we are two countries separated by a common language. There is no doubt about that. My real-world example is when I was on that vessel, or one of the vessels that was British officers, I needed to use the bathroom. And so I asked the first mate, where the bathroom was. Oh, it says it's just down the passageway. That's how we talk in the Coast Guard today. It's just down the passageway, and it's clearly marked. You'll see it. Well, I walked up and down the passageway, and I went down another passageway in case I misunderstood what he meant by that, and I went the other way, and then I finally came back to the office, and I said, I can't find it. And so he walked me there, and he took me to the door, and he said, see, it's here, it's clearly marked. Well, it was marked with WC. Water closet, yeah. Water closet. Well, I didn't know what a water closet was. Anyway, so the label didn't mean the same thing to me that it meant to him. it was tough for me to understand. In order for us to benefit from the leading cause of life of coherence, we need to be able to talk together in the same language. I think one of the struggles in our nation today, and one of the reasons we're so divided, is we don't agree on the common language of what it means to be a nation, of what it means to be United States citizens. We're divided over ideology and a label that I might use, you might understand differently, and vice versa. The common goal, it doesn't seem to be a common goal anymore. When is the last time, I was going to ask you, when is the last time you saw a State of the Union address where both the Republicans and the Democrats stood up together and applauded something the President said, but I might just say, when's the last time you watched the State of the Union address? I've gotten, I keep laying this on y'all, I don't know where you are, I've gotten so disgusted with it, I don't even want to see anymore, because we're such a divided house. And it's hard because we don't share the same story. And we can see that that is sucking the life out of our nation, in my humble opinion. It's sucking the life out of the nation. So that's kind of a negative view of the leading causes of life. When it's not present, then life also is not generative, is not growing, is not adapting, is not moving forward. Poor communication is listed as the #1 cause of failed marriages. #1 cause of failed marriages, poor communication. As I explore that with couples who are getting married, where I'm going to perform the marriage ceremony, my only criteria for doing a wedding, it doesn't matter if you're a member of the church, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian, it doesn't matter any of that. If you ask me to perform a wedding, I will do it if you're willing to sit through 4 counseling sessions with me. If you can put up with me for 4 hour-and-a-half sessions to 2 hours, whatever. Took a little longer. Anyway, if you sit through that with me, then I'm more than happy to do the wedding. But one of the things we explore is shared meaning, because it's so important to the life of the relationship. We talk about understanding of similar expectations, what it means to share work around the house, who's going to do what, the number of children each one is planning to have. They fill out a little inventory beforehand separately, and then I look at those and we talk about it. If one says we're going to have 6 children and the other one says 0, we need to talk. There perhaps is something lacking in communication. You're not sharing the same meaning of what it means to move on together in life. If one says that it's okay to max out the credit cards, and the other one says we need to freeze it in a block of ice until it's an emergency, and then we thaw it out, and if it's still an emergency by the time it gets thawed out, then maybe we'll use it. There's a different understanding of what it means. If somebody wants to live in the city and the other one wants country, we have to talk. Which end of the tube of toothpaste do you squeeze? That can be an issue. It's important to share. That's, I think, why they came out with that bottle that you can just push the button. It solved a lot of post-marriage